Chapter 181. Who is crueler? Don't be noisy. It's in the middle of the night. Everyone is sleeping, you know? What if you wake everyone? Riser raised his brows, but Vali ignored him. Divine dividing scale mail. There was no hesitation. Vali quickly used a balance breaker, as his opponent wasn't someone he could take on lightly. No, he was going to use everything he did to defeat this guy. Yet, why? Why was this guy smiling? Despite facing such a massive demonic power that Vali emitted and the power of divine dividing, Riser was as calm as ever. Riser even had this small smirk on his lips as if everything was under his control, and Vali was nothing in his eyes. This made Vali, who was the combination of Lucifer and the White Dragon Emperor, which were two embodiments of pride that combined together, unable to control his emotion, staring at Riser dangerously. Yet he didn't approach Riser carelessly as he didn't know what Riser was planning. Geez, you really don't listen to people, huh? However, do you still wish to fight me even if you know that you don't have a chance against me? You should know that death is your only destination, and you only have one arm to fight me now. Even so, you still dare to fight me. Even if Vali stared at him with a provoking gazer, Riser was still calm and asked those questions with ease. To be honest, he was amazed by Vali's courage and stupidity. While he knew that it was quite insulting for Vali, he felt like he was facing Issei. The two of them weren't much different, and they seemed to have short-term memory loss, which caused them to provoke him all the time, even though they knew they weren't his opponents. Was it due to the fact that he was too kind? Yes. Really? There is no need to hesitate, as you should erase this type of opponent who has a bad head. Bad head? Somehow Riser felt that the system was correct as he knew that Vali didn't go to school. While Issei might seem to be more stupid than Vali, to be honest, their IQ was quite similar to each other. Even though Vali knew that he was weak and wasn't even Riser's opponent, he still provoked Riser. Frankly, Riser also agreed that this type of opponent should be erased, as having this type of opponent was troublesome as they didn't know the word give up in their dictionary. However, with what he had gained, he knew Vali could only bow down to him and never dared to fight again. Moreover, Riser felt it was too wasteful if he didn't use this bastard, as Vali was definitely a good tool. I am. Vali answered loudly without fear. I won't forgive what you have done. Moreover, if you feel hatred toward me, then come at me instead of acting like a coward by attacking the others. Riser was speechless. Coward? Was there a coward who dared to charge into the headquarters of Gregory, facing the full-blown of all the fallen angels alone? However, Riser knew that it was impossible for Vali to understand what he was planning. Moreover, talking to stupid people was a waste of time. Sure, then. Let's fight, but let's change our location. Riser turned, showing his back to Vali. Vali frowned, thinking that Riser was too careless or underestimated him, as Riser dared to show his back against him, yet as a dragon and the descendant of Lucifer. He was going to fight his opponent in a fair and just manner instead of using a dirty trick. Yet, oh, I dropped something. Riser squatted down as he picked something on the ground, but watching the things that dropped by him, Vali felt his heart stop before beating so fast. Vali's eyes widened as he was unable to believe what he had seen. What was dropped by Riser was a photo. Yes, a photo. It was a photo which Riser took in Italy with Gabriel. In the photo, which had been edited, there were 2 children and the mother of 2. If it were others, they might not understand who those people were. Even Riser didn't know what their identity was in the beginning. After all, he knew nothing and only came to Italy due to his location ability. However, after he saw those 3 people, he instantly understood who those 3 were. As expected, the moment Vali saw this photo, he showed a strong reaction as he was unable to believe what he had seen. Nevertheless, Riser ignored Vali's reaction and only smiled. Have you been to Italy? If not, then you should, since there were many kind people there. I will K*LL you, Riser. Vali was in a rage and unable to control his emotions, since those people in the photo were 3 people who shouldn't be touched by anyone. In that photo, it was a picture of Vali's mother and step-siblings. After his father was K*led, Vali's mother was separated from him, and her memory was erased so she wouldn't be involved in the supernatural world once again. Vali was happy with it, as he knew that there was no need for his mother to be in sadness and pain again. Even if she forgot about him, it was okay, since he knew his existence would bring nothing but misery to her. While Vali hated his father and grandfather, he loved his mother, as she was the only person who had given him kindness. It was also due to this that he wanted to give her happiness, and he was glad that she gained happiness, especially after she remarried and started a new family. Yet, Once again, his existence brought misery to her. Riser had brought a danger to his mother and his step-siblings. This guy dared to touch what he shouldn't have touched. Similarly, Albion was also in a rage due to Riser's lowly and cowardly move. The two had decided to erase Riser from this world. Yet, facing this anger, Riser was even more enraged. Riser's wish was simple, and he only wished for a peaceful life. He only wanted to spend his days with his women without being troubled by anything. Was his wish too much? He never asked much. He had never troubled others, and he also wasn't a twisted guy who had an urge to K*LL every person who touched him slightly. Yet, why did enemies keep coming toward him? Why was the world so cruel toward him? Why did he have to face so many of these troubles? Moreover, did Vali forget who was the one who had threatened to K*LL him? Did Vali forget what kind of trouble Vali had brought for him? Did Vali think that he would do nothing and let himself be K*led by him? Don't joke around. If you want to K*LL me, then I will K*LL you first. However, Riser knew K*Ling Vali would give him endless trouble, especially when he knew he might become the sinner who would make the peace of the three factions end up in failure. Even if he had controlled the fallen angels, it didn't mean they couldn't betray him since, as long as they saw a chance, they would bring him down. Moreover, there was also Surzek. If Surzek moved, then Ajuka would also move. Azazel was the same since Riser knew what kind of two-faced hypocrite and liar this guy was. While Serafal, his family, and the Citri family would help him, he knew their help was limited. By then, it wouldn't be strange for him to live in jail and be blamed for all the failures. While there was also another path by joining the criminal, living in the darkness, Riser didn't want that as he wanted to live in the light. Such a future definitely wasn't something that he wanted to see. So, he was going to become cruel. Be a demon. Be a monster. Become their nightmare. For all of his enemies, he was going to make them regret and make them live in misery as he K*led them slowly. Chapter 182. Riser is still kind. If you touch me, then they are going to die. When those words fell, Vali, who was about to beat Riser, stopped his movement and didn't dare to touch him, but his eyes under the armor were full of hatred and fury. Don't involve them. If you want to fight, I will welcome you anytime. I won't run away. Don't act like a coward, Basti. Vali couldn't continue his words as his cheek was slapped. Even if his face was covered in armor, Riser's slap wasn't something that could be blocked by mere armor. A black flash-like lightning spark flashed from his slap. The moment Vali was hit, he felt his head was dizzy and his ear was ringing. Undone your balance breaker. As Riser had robbed all the research done by Gregory, he knew many things about the sacred gear, including the most common strongest state of the sacred gear, balance breaker. Vali fell in silence and didn't say anything, nor did he do anything. But, don't make me repeat myself. Vali. Albion spoke with Vali through his mind as he learned of Vali's decision. No one could tell what this madman could do. No, this guy could do anything as Riser could even go to Italy, pretending to be someone who cared about the peace in the supernatural world. Yet the truth was he was just coming to get the weakness of the White Dragon Emperor. This was what made Riser a fearsome opponent. When no one knew about this weakness, Riser knew about it. Even if this weakness was just a civilian who wasn't involved in the supernatural world, he didn't care and ruthlessly involved them without their knowing, as they thought of him as just a kind older brother. Facing such an opponent, Vali felt his entire body trembling due to coldness, and his entire body was constricted by powerful chains that squeezed him tightly. He wished to escape, but he couldn't. He was trapped there, and everything was under Riser's control. Still, because of this, Vali followed his words and released his balance breaker, but a powerful kick struck his chest. Goa. Vali. Like before, his ribs were broken, which made Vali remember the terror of that day. You bastard. Albion's anger couldn't be hidden from his loud voice. Even though he was sealed on the divine dividing, he still had his consciousness, showing how big his hatred toward Riser was. Are you sure to talk to me like that? His family might die if you talk to me in that tone. Albion. Even if Vali was in extreme pain, he scolded Albion harshly. Vali. For the first time, Albion realized the feeling of helplessness. Nevertheless, even if his body was in pain, Vali's eyes never died as he stared at Riser. However, Riser hated this type of eye the most. Did Vali think that he was righteous? Even though Vali was the one who provoked him? Did Vali think that as long as he was the descendant of Lucifer and the holder of the divine dividing, he was going to be forgiven? So, as long as Vali had all of those, was it alright to mess with his life? Still, Vali was stupid. So Riser understood that this guy was an idiot, and there was no meaning in talking with such a guy. As the smart one, Riser felt that he needed to teach him what kind of a mistake that Vala had made. Still, Riser didn't bother to beat Vali again since he knew physical harm was useless. For this type of guy, physical harm was meaningless. Riser also felt that his clothes would become dirty by beating up this guy, so that kick was enough. It's funny that you can think that you are the victim even though you were the cause of everything. Watching Riser smile and hearing his eased tone, Vala frowned as he clutched into his painful chest. To be honest, I don't hate you, or rather, I have never known you until we met at Kuo Academy. Riser sighed as he thought about his past. If possible, I don't want us to be enemies. Then, why did you do all of this? Vala suppressed his anger as he asked that question. Why did Riser need to threaten him with his mother and step-siblings? Why did this guy plan to K'LL him? Why did he have to face this injustice? Isn't it your fault? My fault. Hearing such a natural answer from Riser's mouth, Vali was confused and also in doubt as he had never thought that he had done anything wrong. Are you so stupid that you forgot everything? Was your brain so tiny that all you could think was only a fight and fight? Riser stared at Vala, causing him to flinch and unable to look at him straight, but he grasped his hair hard, forcing Vala to stare into his eyes. Use your tiny brain and try to remember who talked to me condescendingly, arrogantly like I was trash? Try to remember who wished to beat me up before. Try to remember who wished to K'LL me. Try to remember who announced in front of everyone, swore, making a vow that he was going to K'LL me. Hey, look at me. Riser's voice was calm, cold, and without any emotions, yet it made Vala's chest become so stuffy, and his neck was strangled that he couldn't breathe. Moreover, due to Riser's hand, he couldn't look away from him, and was forced to stare into Riser's abyss-like eyes, giving him an eerie, creepy, and terror-like feeling. So, do you think it is okay for you to K'LL me and threaten me, yet it isn't okay for me to threaten you? That's unfair, right? How unreasonable. Now, you should understand that if your mother and step-siblings are dead, then it is all your fault. Not only the step-siblings and mother, but Azazel, the Gregory, and many others. If all of them are dead, it is all your goddamn fault. Riser whispered those words slowly so Vali would understand the consequences of his actions. And my fault. Yes, that's why I won't K'LL you, but I will cut your limbs so you won't be able to fight and seal your divine dividing and power, then force you to watch me K'Ling all the people you care about one by one as you regret your decision. No. No. Please don't. Don't K'LL them. Just K'LL me. I am the one, right? I am the one who has caused so much trouble for you. I just ended my life. Don't get them involved. I beg you. Vala didn't care how ugly he was at that moment. Vala groveled on the ground as he kept beginning him, realizing what kind of opponent he had made. Vali regretted it. If it was only his life, Vala didn't care. But what about the others? As Vala thought he could only watch all of the people he cared about die one by one as he was unable to do anything, it might be better for him to die. Please. I beg you. Geez, why do you make me like a bad guy? Aren't you the one who provokes me and the one who starts everything? Riser was full of helplessness as he watched Vali on his feet, hugging his leg tightly, begging him, almost kissing his calfskin leather shoes. He also didn't want to become a demon or a monster, but weren't you the one who forced him to become one? Tell me what Azazel wishes you to do? Riser asked as he kicked Vali away as he didn't want Vala to dirty his shoes. Vali didn't care about the pain in his body and narrated the plan that Azazel wished him to do. Riser didn't K'LL him immediately, so he knew that Riser had a plan for him. Nevertheless, this also brought him wariness, thinking that Riser might force him to K'LL Azazel. Still, if Riser wished to K'LL Azazel, even if he knew that he might K'LL the others, he was going to bet to go do or die, K'Ling Riser and bringing him with him to hell. Yet, Vala suddenly remembered Azazel's words. He's immortal. Even if you K'LL him, he can't die. If you can't K'LL him, then he is going to K'LL the others. With those words, Vali didn't dare to do anything and truthfully told everything as he had given up, only hoping Riser wouldn't ask him a cruel request. After all, the life of his mother and his step-siblings was in Riser's hands. Watching Vala, Riser sighed as he saw Vala's eyes, thinking that everyone in this world was stupid as they thought they had a chance against him, ignoring the consequences. Did they ever think that he would give them mercy? Did they ever think that he was going to let them go? Riser didn't like to K'LL, but since they forced him, There was nothing he could do since their happiness would mean his misery. Okay, I understand. Still, he had to say Vali was a good boy as Vala told everything truthfully. I can let go of your mother and step-siblings. Really? Vali was surprised. Yes, I won't do anything to them. I won't K*LL them, but I want you to do something for me. What is it? Vala grew anxious, but Riser ignored that and said his request like he asked Vala to buy him ice cream at the convenience store. K*LL Surzek for me. Chapter 183. Each of their thoughts. Riser ignored Vala's reaction and spoke about the plan of how Vali was going to K*LL Surzek before he left quietly. As for whether Vali was going to do it or not, Vali didn't have a choice, especially when his family was in Riser's hands. I believe in you, Vali. As the White Dragon Emperor and the descendant of the Lucifer, you should be able to do it. Oh, right, you shouldn't tell anyone. The moment you tell someone, I don't need to remind you, right? Then, as Riser disappeared without leaving any traces, the barrier that surrounded them disappeared, and Vali returned to reality as he thought everything was a dream, especially when Vali was no longer feeling the pain in his chest as his body healed. Yet, he knew what had happened previously was a reality. Are you going to do it? Albion asked uneasily. You should know how hard his request is and what your actions might bring to the people in your surroundings. Do I have a choice? No, Vali didn't have a choice. Whether he wished for it or not, he could only do it as he knew he couldn't fight that demon's words. Nevertheless, Vali was glad that he didn't need to K*LL Azazel or the acquaintances. As for Surzek, even though Vala had to say sorry as Surzek had saved him, his family was more important, and as he had said before, he didn't have any choices. Moreover, Surzek was just a stranger to him. Yet, with his tiny brain and naive attitude, Vala might not understand the consequences of his action and what kind of chain reactions his action would bring. However, he understood the feeling of regret, especially when trying to fight him. However, there was nothing he could do, and he needed to go back lest he make Azazel realize everything. Unlike before, his steps were weaker, and he felt frightened, as if he could feel eyes that stared at him from the dark, threatening him and all the people in his surroundings anytime, anywhere, the moment he opened his mouth. Ikakiryu wasn't sure how many times she had done this. She lay on her bed in a daze as she looked at the worn-out summoning paper that she picked that day, hoping the one that she sought after would come out. Yet, no matter how many times she wished, he didn't come out as if his existence was just a dream. Would they not be able to meet each other again? When she thought of this, her eyes were filled with tears, crying. Yet, how could she not be? For the first time, she had fallen to someone. Even though this someone wasn't a human like her, he was a devil, and there was no doubt what she felt about him. Nevertheless, even though he suddenly disappeared out of nowhere, she didn't give up and continued to search for him. By using feng shui, which he taught her, she got to know the other devils in this city, who happened to be Asia, her best friend. Frankly, she was surprised, but at the same time, she was glad since Asia was someone she happened to know, so there was nothing she needed to be worried about. To be honest, she knew it was all due to him. If what he taught her was something else, she might not be able to find her lead easily. However, with feng shui, she greatly enhanced her luck, quickly finding the clues to find him. As expected, the moment she asked Asia, she told her everything, and she also understood how amazing he was. Yet, the he from Asia's eyes was different from her eyes as she saw his gentle side, but Asia saw his ruthless side. In Asia's eyes, she knew he wasn't someone that she could provoke. However, for Aika, he was someone who she loved. Nevertheless, even if Aika said many things, Asia wasn't stupid, and she didn't tell about the fight, which happened on Kuo as it was scary. Surzek could erase all the devils that followed him. Then what about Aika, who was just a normal human? If possible, Asia didn't wish for Aika to be involved in this world as it was dangerous. However, Aika didn't care about the danger. No, she might not understand as she was obsessed with finding him, yet after that day she changed. Aika met him, but unlike he, whom she saw every night, the he she saw that day was so cold, ignoring her like a stranger. Moreover, the horror that she felt that day remained on her body, and she was unable to shake it, realizing how small and weak her existence was. At that time, Aika realized the reality before them. He stood above everyone, high in the sky. Meanwhile, she was on the ground and could only look up at him as she knew how dangerous his world was and how powerless she was at that time. Nevertheless, the fact that he ignored her that day didn't change. Why did he do that? Was he worried that she would get involved in his problem? Or was he throwing her away? Still, she knew that he had a wife, and it was something inevitable that he would choose his wife. Yet when she thought about the woman that stood by his side, tremble. She hugged her body tightly as the feeling of fear from that woman hadn't been forgotten by her body. Nevertheless, she wished it was the former who decided to ignore her. Being his woman meant that she might be targeted. Or was it due to Issei? She heard from Asia that Issei often caused trouble for Riser. Ika didn't know, but she knew if she wished to meet him, she needed to become stronger. If they couldn't meet each other, then she would come to him to the underworld. After all, it was impossible for her to forget about him, and she wished to be with him. There was no way she could accept the end of their relationship just like this. As she made up her mind, she used her feng shui, letting her luck lead her to the best path that could make her reach her destination and achieve her wish to meet him. Akino, who had washed her body, prepared to sleep, but unlike before, he wasn't by her side. Was it even possible for him to return? Akino knew that the conflict between Riser and Surzek had reached the point where neither would back down. It wouldn't be weird if they tried to K*LL each other again, and as the servant of the Gremory, it was impossible for her to go after Riser since it was a betrayal, and in the worst case, she might be K*led. Yet when she thought about the world without him, there was no doubt such a world was definitely not something that was worthy of living. However, she didn't plan to commit suicide as a small hope still remained within her heart. Even if she knew it might be impossible, as she knew how resolute he was when he had made his decision, deep in her heart, she wished for him to think of her inside his heart. Laying on her bed, she couldn't help but reminisce about their meetings. In the beginning, she seduced him, and he moved on to her even though she knew what she did might cause him nothing but trouble. So, was this her punishment? Was this her karma? Yet, if he didn't meet her, then it was okay. Like before, she should be satisfied with observing him from a distance. That was enough for her, but he didn't hide his presence. The moment he came, she quickly noticed it. She rose from her futon and opened the sliding door near her room. There, she saw the figure that she had been wishing to meet. Yet, her feelings were complex. She was happy to see him, but at the same time, she wondered whether it was okay for him to be near him, especially when her existence would bring him nothing but trouble. However, her thoughts didn't matter to him as he hugged and kissed her lips. It had been a while since they were together, and she was in the trace as they kissed while subconsciously sticking out her tongue like a trained dog. But then she realized what she was doing, wishing to get away as she was afraid that she would bring him misfortune and disaster. Yet, in the end, she couldn't. She hugged him tightly and didn't let him go like someone who was trapped in the desert and found an oasis for the first time. She greedily sought after his existence as she ignored her shame, acting like a lewd little animal. Impregnate me. There were no words from him. Riser was like a wild stallion that was going to impregnate this lewd mare. Yet, as the two were mating like animals, a petite figure stood in the corner, watching them quietly as she covered her mouth with her hands and widened her eyes as she was in shock at what she had seen. Chapter 184. Voyeur. In his arms, Akino wasn't sure how many times she longed for it to happen. She often dreamed about him, wetting many of her panties. Sometimes, she even used her fingers to satisfy her lust, yet that wasn't enough. He was the only one. That night, she didn't care about anything, and she kept moving her waist body, waving her hair like a whore. The young woman, who was often called the personification of the Yamato Nadeshiko, a Japanese beauty, the epitome of pure, feminine beauty, was no longer seen. At that moment, she was just a woman who sought after her man to dominate, torment, and possess her. She wished for him to be crazy about her as they let themselves burn together on this flame of passion. Whether it was Rias, Surzek, or any others, neither were in their eyes. In their eyes, they were only each other. Neither cared about the other things, and they only focused on their obscene lovemaking. As his erection pounded violently into her wet lewd hole, the two stuck out their tongues, intertwining, sucking saliva as they hugged each other. Their act definitely wasn't like a creature with rational thinking could do. In this act, they were lowered into an animal in heat, focusing only on their vulgar act. Yet, they might realize, or they might not realize, that a single figure had been staring in their direction and unable to move away. It wasn't that she had a voyeur hobby, but her legs were too weak as she was unable to walk due to the shock she felt when she saw the two. Koneko Tuju didn't know what to do and just stared at them from her hiding place as she held her breath. As for why she decided to move into Akino's house, it was all due to when she hugged Akino that day. She felt calm when she hugged Akino, but at the same time, she also felt curious as she smelled his scent on her body. By then, after she noticed his scent on Akino's body, even if it was faint, almost every day, she could smell his scent on Akino's body. However, Koneko had never talked to anyone about this matter and just kept it inside her heart. But it was also due to this she got closer to Akino as this scent calmed her, giving her peace of mind and ease. Especially after that unforgettable fight at the Kuo Academy. It was a day that she could never forget, and she could still remember his figure that kept fighting against so many alone. On that day, she had never felt that it was so pleasant and fortunate to have someone who could protect her. Even if he didn't come, especially for her, his existence brought peace of mind to everyone. However, she knew that she would no longer get that peace of mind, especially when he had become the enemy of the older brother of her master. She felt restless and didn't know what to do, but she didn't dare to do anything. She was just a coward and a weak girl. Facing such overwhelming power, she could only stand on the side like everyone else as she could not do anything. Yet she knew the most frustrated one would be Akino, as she could see her digging her nails deep into her palms, bleeding. In the end, while nothing had happened, a crack was inevitable happened. After that day, he was no longer seen as if he had disappeared, and his scent could also no longer be smelled from Akino's body. Still, after that day, Akino didn't go to school and spent most of her time resting in her home. Naturally, everyone was worried, but while Rias thought everything was due to Kokobile, who talked about her origin, Koneko thought that it was all due to her separation from him. Still, due to this, Koneko decided to take the initiative to stay with Akino, which Akino agreed to. Even though Akino started to smile, Koneko could see this smile was fake. Akino tried to hide her sadness by smiling so as not to make everyone worried or just not to make them realize what she had been hiding. Koneko wasn't sure, but after that day, she could see that Rias and Akino often communicated with each other, talking about something. While they might keep their conversation a secret, she could tell what they were talking about, especially when she saw their gazes on him during his raiding game. Nevertheless, he had never appeared, and at that time, during the class event, she could see how he ignored them like a stranger. Even if she didn't have a relationship with him and never talked to him, she could imagine the pain that Akino felt that day. However, could their relationship even start to begin with? Due to the conflict between Surzek and Riser, Koneko knew that their relationship was doomed. Yet, the more dangerous the relationship was, the more intoxicated it was. Like Akino, Koneko also noticed someone had come to the shrine all of a sudden without any precaution, and she was ready to do something, but she saw the person who had become one. Her mind was blank, and she didn't dare to do anything. While Riser might be the enemy of Surzek, Koneko definitely didn't want to be involved in their fight due to her cowardice, and while she felt he was scared, her perception of him had changed from the beginning. Initially, she might not have had a good impression of him due to her master's hostility, but that perception of her changed the more she met him, and the more people in her surroundings changed due to him. Yet, she didn't expect the moment Akino and Riser met, they would do something like this. She wasn't unfamiliar with what they were doing since, as a Nekishu, a rare race of Yikai, she knew the ultimate purpose of her race was to make a family and have children. Koneko was also the same, but if possible, she wanted to have someone who could protect her as she didn't wish to feel the terror she felt that day. Even now, the memory of her childhood still haunts her. The pain when her big sister betrayed her, the faces of everyone who wished to KLL her, and despair when she realized she was alone. Koneko didn't want to experience all of that again. Yet, all of those things suddenly disappeared when she saw the coitus between Riser and Akino. Her head was blank, and she couldn't do anything except stare at them, watching how such a big thing stirred into Akino's deep violently. Even though it might seem painful, she could see Akino's expression was full of bliss. It was her first time seeing Akino, who had such an obscene expression. While she didn't understand, she could feel her body was scorching. Her body was uncomfortable, yet she didn't know what to do and just kept staring at them in silence as she tried to make her presence as small as possible so they wouldn't notice her. Chapter 185. You will understand. When dawn came, Riser let go of Akino. While he could continue, he was afraid that she would break, especially when he was so violent with her. He knew that he might have said this before, but he had this violent tendency where he often lost his reason when he had S**X. While some females loved it, others preferred the gentle one like his wife. However, Akino seemed to love it due to her preference as a masochist. Nevertheless, the fire in his heart had subdued, and he just needed to wait until that day. Riser, you are not sleeping? He looked at Akino, who seemed to be struggling. She was exhausted and sleepy, but she endured it as she had something to discuss, but she hesitated. What's wrong? In the end, she shook her head. It's nothing. She was afraid that the moment she said it, he would leave her. She didn't doubt it, as she knew while he might seem crazy about her, she could feel that he was distant and wouldn't let her enter his heart, so she was afraid that if she talked about her past, he might not be able to accept it. Tell me. He hugged her from behind as he whispered those words. Her body shivered due to the sudden pleasure. Wait. It's really a bit too much for me. I'm going to die. Then, tell me. She turned worriedly, yet she was surprised as he welcomed her with sincere eyes. She felt like she wanted to cry for some reason, but in the end, she talked as if she didn't wish to deceive him. You should know what Kokobile said before, right? What did he say? To be honest, he was so weak that I forgot about him, and most of the things which he said were unintellectual, so I didn't bother to remember them. Riser only remembered that Kokobile said, die, before Kokobile died. As for the matter of the god who passed away, what did it have to do with him? He didn't care whether God died or not, as it didn't bother his life. Moreover, Kokobile had died. For those who had died, what did they have to do with him? Overthinking would lead him to worry, and it would destroy his peaceful life, so he had never had a hobby of overthinking. Akino. Watching him, she knew that he didn't lie since she could see that he really didn't have an interest in Kokobile. In the end, she decided to be truthful. You might not know, but I am the descendant of a fallen angel. Oh? Are you Azazel's daughter? No. Akino quickly refuted him, but then, she didn't want a misunderstanding to happen. My father is a fallen angel, and his name is Betrayal. Betrayal. Riser murmured and thought about the strongest fallen angel that faced him that day. He still recalled the holy lightning that struck his body that day. There was no doubt that among all the fallen angels he faced that day, Betrayal was the one he remembered the most, as Betrayal was the strongest and the most courageous. Isn't he one of the cadre of the Gregory? Why did you become a devil then? Akino was in silence and stared at Riser in a daze. Why were you looking at me like that? Riser was confused. You don't hate me? Why should I hate you? Riser was even more confused. Because I am the descendant of the fallen angel. Don't you hate them? Especially when they have given you so much trouble and fought you that day. So that's what makes you worried about. Riser nodded and understood why she looked at him with that expression. Akino's heart was far from calm as she wished to hear an answer from him. If you are worried about that, you don't need to worry. I don't hate fallen angels. Moreover, isn't I the one who had defeated them before? But. Riser stared at Akino and asked, or do you want to leave me? Is that what you want? No. I don't want to leave you. I want to be with you forever. There was no way for her to wish to leave him. Her wish was simple, and that was to be with him. Then, you don't need to worry since I won't leave you. He hugged her in his arms gently. Those words eased her, and she slept as she hugged him tightly, wishing that everything wasn't a dream. Yet, what she didn't realize, his eyes flickered for a moment before he closed his eyes to sleep after he kissed her soft, beautiful black hair. On the next day, they wake up quite late. Nevertheless, while Akino was slightly tired, she woke up to prepare breakfast for the two. As for him, he just lay on the bed and continued to sleep as he hadn't taken a break after he went back from Italy. Akino didn't wake him up, but when she was about to go to the kitchen, she saw a petite figure who seemed to be sleeping in the corridor. Her expression became subtle and awkward, but then, when she thought about what would happen if her relationship was known, her eyes were unshaken and firm as if she had made up her mind. Koneko. Koneko opened her eyes, startled as she saw Akino, who was looking at her kindly. She quickly realized that she had been found out and cursed herself as she had slept during the dawn, so she was unable to go back to her room before Akino woke up. Did you see us? Koneko felt her heart stop when she heard that question. Not only did she watch them, but she stared at them until dawn. Yet, could she say that? In the end, Koneko could only acknowledge. Yes, Akino-san. I see. Akino sighed, but then she showed a gentle smile. Can you keep this a secret from Rias and others, Koneko-chan? You should know what kind of trouble might befall us if the others know. If Rias was also his harem, then there might not be trouble, but that wasn't the case, especially with how tense the relationship between Riser and Surzek was. While the relationship between the House of Phenex and the House of Gremory was okay due to an apology from Lord Gremory and Lady Gremory during Riser's promotion to the ultimate class devil, it was a different case with Surzek. Surzek clearly showed his attitude when he didn't come during Riser's promotion. While Surzek and Rias were different, they were still a family, and it was impossible for Akino to date Riser openly and announce that she was his woman. Yes. Koneko agreed as she didn't want trouble to befall Akino. Thank you. Akino smiled kindly as she gently caressed Kaneko's head. You must be hungry. I will cook breakfast soon. Thank you. Koneko thanked Akino, but then she couldn't hold her curiosity. Akino-san, can I ask you something? What's wrong? Why? Why did you do it? You mean, why did I date him? Koneko nodded as she waited for an answer. Akino smiled and said, It's because I am weak, Koneko. Weak? Please don't think of anything weird. I know that my feelings will do nothing but bring him trouble, but I just can't endure it and seduce him. But he is just different, and I love him so much. That's probably the reason why I want to be with him, even if I know that our relationship might burn the two of us. It might be hard for you to understand, but... Akino suddenly approached Koneko and whispered, If you get close to him, you will understand, Koneko. What do you mean, Akino-san? Koneko blushed due to the hidden implication behind those words. Fu. You are still young, so you might have a hard time understanding, so just learn everything slowly, Koneko. I will make breakfast first. Koneko didn't stop Akino and watched her leave the kitchen as she thought about her previous words. If I get close to him, I will understand? Chapter 186, Pet. While Riser wanted to continue to sleep, he decided to wake up, especially when he felt a stare. Yes, a stare. While he knew where this stare came from, he didn't bother to startle this person. He just acted like this stare didn't exist, washing his body before waiting for the lunch prepared by Akino. Akino might have worked hard last night, but with his Phenex tears, was there something that he couldn't heal? Frankly, by eating Tori no Mi, model, Phenex, his physical ability was even stronger, more durable, and more resilient. There was also an effect from orichalcos that made his physical ability stronger as long as he was hurt, so even after a strenuous battle last night, it was impossible for him to calm down, especially when he saw Akino's current appearance. Akino dressed plainly in an apron as she sang a song he didn't know, and there was this taste of housewife that came from her, making him eager to do another battle, but he knew it was impossible with the presence that had been staring at him. In the end, he sighed and decided to face this figure. The petite figure startled when he looked at her. Her natural action was to run away, but he didn't seem to move and just stared at her plainly, so she didn't do anything and stared at him curiously. The two stared at each other until he gestured for her to come to him. Watching this, she hesitated, but in the end, she crept out from her hiding place and cautiously came in his direction. She walked slowly, closer and closer, until she sat by his side. Do you like sweets? Riser asked. Koneko nodded. Riser took out a chocolate that he had bought from Italy and gave it to Koneko. Take it. Koneko was surprised, but she accepted the chocolate from him. Thank you, Riser-sama. Her voice was quiet, but she thanked him. No problem. Riser didn't bother to look at Koneko again and took out a pistachio, eating it as a snack while waiting for lunch, looking at the silhouette of Akino's plump and soft buttocks, and glanced at Koneko, who ate chocolate before her eyes shone dew of its deliciousness. Watching this, he thought that Koneko's past must be horrible, too. While eating sweets might not seem like a bad thing, and it was even seen as cute, he didn't think so, as having a sweets addiction wasn't much different from having an addiction to alcohol, cigarettes, and even drugs. Sweets have a lot of sugar, and sugar releases dopamine in the nucleus acc*bins, the part of your brain linked to reward, novelty, and motivation. In other words, consuming sweets wasn't much different from consuming drugs. If there was a reason why Koneko was okay, it was all due to her training and race traits. If it was someone else, they would have gotten sick already due to the amount of sweets. Just when he ate his pistachio, he felt another stare at him. He looked at Koneko again, and it seemed that she had finished her chocolate bar. Did you finish it? Yes. Koneko lowered her head as she was embarrassed, especially when she could see the surprise in his eyes. In his eyes, did he think of her as a pig? When she thought of that, she felt embarrassed and ashamed. Is it delicious? Riser asked. Yes, Riser-sama. Koneko nodded. The taste of the chocolate was delicious, and she wondered where he bought it since that way she could buy it herself. I didn't buy much from my trip to Italy before, so bear with this. Riser opened the shell of the pistachio and fed the pistachio to Koneko. Open your mouth. Ah. Koneko opened her mouth naturally as she led him to feed her with pistachio. Her small, pink tongue took the pistachio skillfully and ate it with bright eyes. As her mouth was sweet before, the salty taste of the pistachio seemed to be enhanced. Still, this amount was too small to satisfy her, so she looked at him again. Riser, who was eating his pistachio, stopped when he felt Koneko's stare again. He wanted to eat his pistachio, but in the end, he sighed and fed her again. Open your mouth. Ah. This time, without even his instruction, her small mouth was wide open as she waited for him to feed her. As she ate the pistachio happily, he was helpless. Aren't you a little too spoiled? How about you open the pistachio by yourselves? He placed a handful of pistachios on a plate before the table. Hearing his words, she didn't say anything and did what she was told, but strangely enough, the taste was different. It wasn't as delicious as before, so she looked at him again before she looked at his large frame. With her petite body, it should be possible for her to sit on his lap. Nevertheless, she hesitated as she knew how rude her action was, but somehow, she felt that it might be good to sit on his lap as he fed her. What's wrong? Riser asked as he could see the struggle on her face. Koneko didn't say anything and just stared at his lap, then looked up at him. Even if no words were exchanged, her expression told everything. Riser wondered why he seemed to be popular. Still, he suddenly thought of something. Was it due to animal affinity? Riser recalled the reward he got from Misla, which he thought was useless as he had never thought of becoming a beast tamer, but it seemed this reward had a certain use. Nevertheless, he didn't really want to use this reward to attract a cat. You want to sit on my lap? As her wish was seen through by Riser, Koneko lowered her head embarrassedly, but somehow, courage was born within her heart, so she looked at him pitifully. Riser stared at Koneko for a moment, but he didn't say anything and just raised one of his hands, acquitted her wish. Koneko didn't waste her time and slipped into his lap, sitting there as she searched for the most comfortable position before she let out a pleased sigh. She had never thought that everything would change just by sitting on his lap, and it felt so snug. Sitting on his lap, she felt she had found a place to call home. Like any other cat, while she also wished to make a powerful descendant, she also wished to have a place to be called a home, as being a stray cat was the last thing she wished for. Having a place that could be a so-called home and gaining peace where she didn't need to be afraid of the rain and danger was something she wished for. Riser wasn't sure how she felt, but he felt like he was raising a small animal for some reason. Still, he decided to ignore this cat and continued to eat. But as a cat, Koneko was rather spoiled as she patted his thigh lightly and looked at him again. He looked at Koneko, who opened her small mouth wide and moved her pink tongue slightly as if asking him to feed her again. Nevertheless, when Akino finished with her lunch, she called them. The lunch is ready, she stopped her words since she saw Riser and Koneko suddenly had gotten so close. Wasn't he too fool at seducing a woman? While Akino was speechless, she also smiled and was happy since, this way, Koneko had become her partner in crime. Chapter 187. Goodbye. Koneko, how long are you going to sit on his lap? While Akino was happy that Koneko would definitely keep their secret, she also felt jealous and resentful since Koneko hadn't moved from Riser's lap. After they had eaten lunch, Koneko didn't move from his lap and continued to sit there as they watched the television together. Even if Akino asked her to move, she didn't do so and continued to sit there as if showing her resistance. What are you being jealous of? Riser stared at Akino speechlessly since, unlike his relationship with Akino, he had never thought much of Koneko. Instead, he felt like she was similar to a pet or a little sister somehow. Didn't you often sit on me? Akino's face flushed red as she lightly chided him. That's it, and this is different. Koneko looked at the two with a subtle gaze as she had seen what they had been doing, and she knew Riser didn't lie as Akino often sat on him. No, instead of sitting, it should be riding. Akino was like a matador who sat on the top of a fierce bull, handling with care and love. Still, Koneko suddenly became curious. Did it really feel that good? How long are you going to stay? Akino suddenly asked as if she tried to change the awkwardness between them. Nevertheless, this question also cornered her as she wished for him to stay for longer. Koneko also looked up at him curiously and clutched his shirt, showing a pitiful expression since she would feel disappointed if Riser left so early. Riser rubbed Koneko's head carelessly and said, I will go back tomorrow. It wasn't that he didn't want to stay a little longer, but he knew the meeting of the three factions would be held soon. When this meeting was about to start, he planned to return to Sona's house before returning to the underworld. As for attending this meeting, don't be kidding. Unlike Surzek and the rest, Riser wasn't interested in this meeting. Even if the three factions were still at war, it didn't change his life that much. Moreover, He had taken down the Gregory, so there was nothing that he had to do. Lastly, with what was about to happen in the meeting, he didn't plan to join at all since he knew it would be troublesome. Nevertheless, he thought that everyone was so desperate for peace. Well, it wasn't that he didn't hate peace, as living a peaceful, lazy life was his dream, and soon, that dream was about to be realized. Is that so? Akino was slightly disappointed as Riser would leave tomorrow, but she didn't force him, especially when she thought about what to do later. What's wrong? Riser asked as he noticed something on Akino's expression. You should know the meeting of the three factions, right? Is there something wrong? Surzek-sama had told me that the leader of heaven, Michael-sama, would come to visit me and asked me to help him purify the holy sword, Ascalon. Holy sword? Ascalon? What's the use of it? Are you going to give it to Rias Knight? Riser was confused as he didn't think that Kiba had such a significant value that Surzek would do his best to help him gain a holy sword from Michael, the leader of heaven. It's not for Kiba, but for... Oh, for that pervert? Akino knew that Riser hated Issei so much, so she didn't mention Issei in front of him. To be honest, she didn't want to help as she also didn't like Issei due to his conduct and her relationship with Riser. It was also due to this hate that even though Issei was troubled by the Red Dragon Emperor who ravaged his body due to the forceful balance breaker, which he did during Riser's engagement with Rias that day, she didn't do anything, pretending that she didn't know anything. In the end, Rias could only ask for Surzek's help, and Surzek quickly acted by giving Issei a bracelet to calm down Issei's arm that had been sacrificed to gain a power that he shouldn't have. As for where this bracelet came from, Riser didn't need to ask since he knew where this bracelet probably came from. It was also because of this reason that he knew that he needed to erase that noisy guy. That guy might not be powerful, even weak, and a coward who didn't have a shred of pride, but Riser knew this guy was like a cockroach, which was disgusting. It's okay. You don't need to worry about me. I'm not small enough to get angry with you due to this. You can't reject it after all. Thank you. Akino hugged him happily. With her situation, how could she reject Surzek's request? The memory of where Surzek massacred all the devils that followed him that day still remained in her memory. If she refused, would Surzek treat her the same way? Nevertheless, Riser felt that Akino thought too much, considering her identity. Yet, he also understood that if Akino's father was just an average fallen angel, would she be Rias' queen? The answer was obvious, right? However, Riser felt that Surzek really pampered Issei so much. In Surzek's mind, Issei was probably the hope that he had been waiting for. Moreover, Issei's dream was to become a harem king, so as long as he became the strongest and married all the women from various factions in the supernatural world, peace could be gained. As for this meeting, this was the start of everything. So, it was all due to this. Nothing could go wrong. Nevertheless, it had nothing to do with him, and as he had talked before, he went home the next day and went to play with Sona and Zenobia before it was time for him to go back to the underworld. Before he left, Akino sent him a text that the matter of the Ascalon had ended, and she wondered whether he would play for a while at her house, which he agreed to. There was no doubt his stay in the human world was great, but when he was about to return to the underworld by train, he happened to meet Serafal and Surzek. Riser-chan. Serafal jumped into him as usual, as if the awkwardness they had previously never existed. It was said that time would smooth out a relationship, so she thought everyone would go back like before as long as time passed. But in One-chan. Riser smiled as he patted Serafal's back. He appeared gentle and kind, but she could tell their relationship wouldn't return to how it used to be, which made her heart ache. Still, she quickly thought of something and then smiled at Surzek. Surzek-chan. Surzek-chan. Serafal winked at Surzek, clearly reminding him of their previous conversation. As long as Surzek apologized, everything would be okay. However, Surzek didn't seem to notice Serafal's wink. Instead, he completely ignored it and just walked away without talking as he emitted an aura that befitted the title of the Lucifer. Because of this, everyone had a cold sweat, and they could only lower their heads due to Surzek's presence. Yet, Riser was calm as usual, but Serafal panicked. Surzek-chan. Yet Surzek never turned and just left. Serafal stomped her feet, showing her frustration, but she knew it was useless since Surzek didn't have any intention of apologizing. Then, she looked at Riser awkwardly. Riser-chan. You don't need to persuade me more, One-chan. I will go back to the underworld soon after all. You are not going to stay? If I stay, then I am afraid nothing will be peaceful. Serafal wanted to persuade him, but Riser was stubborn and just left like Surzek. Then, goodbye. Strangely enough, when Riser left, his voice was rather loud. It wasn't to the point that it was unnatural. Still, it could be heard by Surzek, who had walked away. Nevertheless, no one had much thought that Riser had just left as he acquiesced the peace which they longed for. Only, they knew the crack between Riser and Surzek was impossible to mend. Serafal, Sona, Rias, and the others looked at Riser's back helplessly, but they knew they needed to focus, considering what they would have to face after this. Then, along with Riser's return to the underworld, the meeting of the three factions started. Chapter 188. Peace is necessary. Issei was extremely nervous as he saw the meeting room for the three factions of the Kuo Academy. A gorgeous and pompous-looking table and those people who were present. Moreover, he didn't expect to see so many influential individuals together in the same room. On the Devil's side, there was Surzek, Serafal, and also Grafia. On the Angel's side, there was Michael, one of the Seraphs. On the Fallen Angel's side, there was Azazel and Vali. Frankly, when Issei saw Azazel and Vala, he became nervous, but when he thought about what had happened previously, he became confident. Even though what had happened on the class visit made him furious and disappointed in himself, what had happened afterward had always been great. The first thing was that he learned he had an underclassman. While this underclassman was cute, unfortunately, this cute underclassman was a guy. Nevertheless, even though he felt disappointed, it felt great to know he was better than the others. He had been feeling useless, so watching someone who was more useless than him put him at ease. Even though Issei didn't say it out loud and didn't even realize that feeling, it was quite easy to realize it after one saw his expression. Still, the matter of the underclassmen, what happened afterward, made him confident as Michael Sama had given him Ascalon, the Dragon Slayer sword. He might not be a swordsman, but with this sword, he was confident to face Vali. Moreover, Vala had only a single arm now, so he didn't feel fear toward him, especially when the White Dragon Emperor was supposed to be his fated opponent, the Red Dragon Emperor. Still, Issei wondered why the arms of Azazel and Vali were okay, and they didn't seem like someone who lost one of their arms. Yet, even if Azazel and Vala noticed Issei's gaze, they didn't gaze at him, ignoring him as they knew this guy was thinking something stupid. Nevertheless, there was no doubt Azazel felt relief when Riser didn't join this meeting. However, he didn't realize the strangeness of Vala, who had been silent and glanced at Surzek for a moment. Surzek also didn't care about this gaze, as he thought Vali was just curious about him. Moreover, with his actions previously that had saved Vala that day, and with their plan, he knew that it was impossible for Vala to have a hostility toward him. Still, the most important thing about this meeting was, without a doubt, Azazel's subordinate, Kokobil, who had attacked Kuo Town, but this wasn't all as Vali and Azazel also fought against Riser. Nevertheless, with their loss, Azazel had promised to give the Devil's side about the result of his research and many other things, yet until now, he hadn't given them anything. Surzek aside, as he wasn't the one who was harmed by Azazel, Serafal pressed this matter further as she wished to get compensation for Riser. In her mind, Riser had been fighting hard, and it was too pitiful if he didn't receive anything. Still facing Serafal's bombardment, Azazel was bitter as no one knew that Riser had invaded the headquarters of Gregory that day, and also conquered the Gregory. Yet, even if this were the case, Azazel definitely wouldn't tell this to anyone as he didn't wish for his faction to be seen as weak. Even though he knew that his faction was the weakest and had been defeated by Riser alone, it was a different case when it came to the others, as they didn't know about it, and it was their fault if they were fooled by him. Nevertheless, there was no doubt among them that Azazel had the most trouble, especially when his faction had been collecting many sacred gears, K*ling those who had sacred gears, and there was even the Longinus user, Vala. There were also more Longinus users, but Azazel only planned to tell them when the peace was confirmed. Still, Azazel knew what they wished for, so, I know. I have made a lot of mistakes. I apologize, so how about this? Let's have a truce. The three of us. I will share all the knowledge that my faction has done and help you with many things. Hearing those words, Michael stopped his complaint and nodded. However, Serafal had enough of this bastard since Azazel had been a liar. How many times did Azazel promise that he would share his knowledge? Yet, did Azazel even share it? There was no way for Serafal to believe him again, but she was stopped by Surzek. Serafal, everything is for peace. Serafal looked at Surzek with an exasperated gaze and helpless sigh while wondering what was wrong with his head. Yet this was normal as Surzek didn't tell her about his plan. While Surzek told Serafal and the other Maus about his plan to have peace with the angel and the fallen angel, he didn't tell anyone about his plan to create Issei, the holder of the boosted gear, as the hero who became a bridge to connect the three factions. Nevertheless, while the leaders talked, the others had been listening, and they couldn't help but frown at Azazel since they knew this guy had been all talk, and they couldn't believe him. Still, it was easy for Azazel to find the breakthroughs. Red Dragon Emperor, Issei Hyudo, what do you think of the peace of the three factions? Azazel suddenly asked. Eh? Issei was confused and answered awkwardly. Even if you ask me. I don't really understand. He was clueless about the problems between the three factions, and he also had never had any intention of learning them since he hated to study. I guess it might be hard for you, so how about this? If I remember well, your dream is to have a harem, right? But do you know that if we have a war, you won't be able to have a harem, but if we have peace, then you will get a harem. So what do you think? Peace. I want peace. As long as it was related to a harem, Issei would get excited and agree directly. Still, due to this, while those who were familiar with Issei could only sigh helplessly, Sona's peerage members were frowning, but no one said anything as Sona had reminded them that this wasn't a place for them to talk. While it might be cruel, everyone was kind to Issei due to his potential as the holder of the boosted gear. They didn't have such a thing, so it was impossible for the leaders to be kind to them. The reality was this, so while it was cruel, they could only accept it. Still, even if they felt that Issei was lucky, when they thought about Issei's grain size, they felt better somehow. However, due to this, everything had become a question and answer session. Issei also asked about the matter of Asia, who was being kicked out of the church, as he couldn't accept such a thing. Facing such an idiotic and perverted boy, Michael easily talked about the difficulty of the church, especially after God had passed away. With his aura, charisma, sadness, and struggle that he showed on his face, everyone was affected and understood the difficulty of the heaven's side. Even Issei also sighed, feeling sorry for Michael. Whether it was Zenobia or Asia, they could accept it, especially Zenobia, as she found out that being a devil was great. Still, about Durandal, Michael gave it to Zenobia as compensation for their treatment toward her as he believed that Zenobia, who was already part of the peerage of Sona, Serafal's little sister, could be entrusted and believed. It was also the same in the original as in the original Zenobia was part of Rias' peerage. If Zenobia was a part of others' peerage, it would have been impossible for Michael to entrust Durandal. Moreover, Sona's husband was Riser Phenex, the supernova in the underworld and the world of devils that had defeated Kokobel, Vela, Azazel, and Tannen. Giving Durandal to Zenobia and gaining their favor was a good trade, he thought. Moreover, Gabriel also told him that she also wished for the peace of the three factions, so Michael also worked hard on this. Yet, even if Gabriel didn't say anything, Michael would do so as he knew this was necessary for the future of Angel. Nevertheless, everything was smooth until the world suddenly stood still, as if the time had stopped. At that moment, Surzek, Azazel, and Michael knew that their plan had started. Chapter 189. Everything is according to the plan. Time stopped, except for those who were strong, such as Azazel, Michael, Surzek, Vela, Serafal, and Graphia, who weren't affected. The others stopped moving and were unable to move, affected by the time-stop power. Still, soon, Issei and Rias also inexplicably woke up from their standstill state, and like those who had woken up, they weren't affected by Gasper Vladi, Rias' bishop, who was also the holder of Forbidden Baylor View, the sacred gear, which had the ability to stop the time, and also the cause of their current predicament. What's happening? Nevertheless, after Issei had woken up, he felt confused and wondered what the situation was, especially when he saw many seem to stand still as if time had stopped for them. Oni-sama, is this? Rias quickly realized everything. You two must do your best to help him. Surzek looked at Issei and Rias and quickly talked about their predicament. Currently, they were attacked by a certain group. Azazel also joined and added information that the reason why he had been collecting sacred users was also due to this organization. The reason is due to the Cows Brigade. Cows Brigade? You can say that they are a terrorist organization in the supernatural world. Naturally, when they hear that the three factions will have peace with each other, they will come to attack us as they won't let us do it. What? Issei was startled. You should have realized our current problem is all due to the sacred gear of your bishop. They must have taken your bishop and forced him to activate his sacred gear. How dare they? Their actions have warranted 1,000 deaths. Rias was enraged when she thought her cute servant was being forcefully used by the terrorist organization. Nevertheless, she was also clueless about what to do, as she knew the moment she walked out of this barrier, she would be affected by Gasper's sacred gear. Watching Rias, who got angry, Michael, Surzek, and Azazel nodded as everything had gone according to their plan. As usual, in this situation, Azazel became the interpreter and explained to everyone what their current situation was and how to escape from this problem. I see. I will use castling. When Rias heard Azazel's explanation, she knew she needed to use the special technique of the evil pieces, castling. It was a technique to switch the position of the king and the rook. One of Rias' rook pieces happened to be in an old school building in the clubroom of a cult research club, and by using that technique, she could save her servant. That plan was agreed upon by everyone, but before Rias left, Surzek told her to bring Issei with her. You need a helper. Bring Issei-kun with you. Rias hesitated, but in the end, she agreed as her other peerage members were still affected by Gasper's time-stop ability. Yet, if they thought carefully, she would notice much strangeness as to why she and Issei were the only ones who weren't affected by Gasper's time-stop ability, even when Sona, Aquino, and the others had a strength that was comparable to her. Still, if she looked at her older brother, she would notice his smile as everything had gone according to his plan. He had given up on making his little sister closer to Riser to mend up the relationship between Rias and him. In the end, he decided to put his bet on Issei, believing he could become the enormous umbrella that could protect everyone, a hero, and also an existence that could defeat Riser. To be honest, Surzek knew that he didn't have the confidence to win against Riser. Moreover, if he fought him, no matter what the result was, everyone would favor Riser as Riser was young. Riser's influence was already crazy, and his little tricks were no longer useful, as no one was blind enough to think that Riser was weak and good for nothing. In the end, the only way to beat him down, putting Riser into his place, was to defeat him. However, Riser's opponent had to be someone his age, and the person he had chosen was Issei, as he knew Issei was the only person who had the potential to defeat Riser. As the holder of the boosted gear, Issei could become the Red Dragon Emperor, the heavenly dragon that once rampaged around the world. More importantly, Issei was Rias' peerage member, and with his simple, perverted personality, who was just satisfied with a harem, Surzek was relieved and knew that Issei wouldn't mess up anything. Everything will go according to my plan. Whether it was his heart and actions, everything was for the future of the devil. Peace. This is what he sought, and he will do whatever he needs to do to get it. Yet when he mentioned peace, his eyes flickered strangely. However, no one paid attention to Surzek as the culprit of this attack had come out. The magic circle of Leviathan. A single woman appeared from the magic circle. She was wearing a dress that was extremely low-cut and had a high slit on it. How do you do, ma Surzek Stano? The woman greeted Surzek with a fearless tone. The one descended from the blood of the previous Leviathan. Kateria Leviathan. What is the meaning of this? Surzek asked with a mix of anger and tension. The members of the old malfaction have nearly all decided to cooperate with Cow's Brigade. When Kateria Leviathan said those words with a defiant smile, she didn't realize that Surzek smiled inwardly. Previously, during the Devil Civil War, even if the old Satan faction had been defeated, many were still living, hiding, and living like a tumor that slowly spread into the devil. Surzek knew that to achieve peace, he needed to clear up all the old malfaction from the underworld. Hearing Kateria, who had announced that nearly all the old malfaction decided to join the Cow's Brigade, Surzek knew that he had a reason to K*LL all of them now. Previously, he was unable to do so since they had given up and joined the new government led by the Great King faction. Zekrom Baal also didn't do anything and agreed since, unlike Surzek, his power wasn't that good. To be honest, it was something unthinkable for the existence of the devil to be able to match, or even above its progenitor, Lucifer. Yet, when God died, many things could happen, and no one could control them. It was also the reason why many never thought of Surzek and Ajuka as devils, as they were like different beings. Nevertheless, Surzek didn't care about their opinion as they were weak. What could the weak do in the supernatural world? Still, as everyone did a question-and-answer session with Kateria answering all of their questions confidently as if she had won, Surzek wondered whether it was possible to push Riser into the Cow's Brigade. After all, as long as Riser was labeled as a criminal, he could do something to him. While Surzek might not be confident of defeating Riser alone, what if he came with Ajuka? As long as the two were together, everything was possible. Yet, What Surzek didn't realize was that his plan had already gone awry from the beginning, especially when he was still in the dark by an existence that was targeting him from behind. Vala stood behind Surzek like it was the most natural thing, and no one paid attention to him as they thought he would follow their plan. However, what they didn't know was that his eyes had been staring at Surzek's back, right at his heart. He knew that it was possible for him to K*LL Surzek and did what he was told, but as Vala looked at Surzek, he wondered whether he should really do what Riser told him. Chapter 190. Good night. It happened before the meeting of the three factions and right after his meeting with Riser that night. At that time, Vala's mind was like being hammered by a heavy, blunt weapon. His breathing was heavy, and his world was spinning, but as the holder of the White Dragon Emperor, he was never alone. Vala, you shouldn't follow him. What do you know? My mother and step-siblings are on his hands. If Vala didn't follow Riser's words, he knew his family would die. Could he forgive himself when that happened? I am saying that you should rely on your friends. Friends. Yeah, you have many reliable friends, right? Ask them to protect your family in case something happens. Moreover, you should know that your opponent is someone from the Phenex family. His power is only related to fire, wind, and immorality. In other words, that coward doesn't have the means to attack from a distance. While I am not sure how he found your family, you can ask your friends to protect your family. If that coward dared to attack your family, you can ask them to protect your family. Albion didn't want his holder, Vali, to like him as the dog of the others. As the dragon, one should lift their head proudly. To be honest, Vala had never told anyone about the existence of his family. The only one who knew about his family was Azazel, who had helped him, so his followers, friends, didn't know anything, yet he knew he didn't have a choice except to rely on them at this moment. While Vali was still restless and worried when he thought how he would be living like a dog, licking Riser's shoes, he also felt unwilling, so he decided to bet, asking the person he trusted the most. He took his phone and called that person. Rennie, can you help me? As Vali looked at the back of Surzek, he hoped nothing had happened, and he just waited anxiously. Albion might have told him that Riser's power was only related to fire, wind, and immorality, but the feeling when he was being stared at from a distance that day was impossible to erase. While Vali wasn't sure, he felt a certain thing had latched onto his body, monitoring him. If that's the case, then he will stop you from contacting Lavinia Rennie. Albion couldn't help but remind Vali. If Riser really had the ability to watch over them, then he would do something when Vala contacted Lavinia Rennie. Suddenly, you're not doing anything? 2x. Albion and Vali were startled when they heard this familiar voice, and they were about to search for him, but his voice was heard once again. Don't bother. I'm not there. No matter how you search for me, it's impossible. You can see me? Do you think you can escape from me? The moment you have decided to become my enemy, do you think you can live happily? No way. As you have decided to K*LL me, I will make your life so painful that you wish to die. Whether Albion or Vala could feel the chill is due to Riser's words. Nevertheless, unlike Vala, who was silent and trembling, Albion wasn't discouraged and provoked Riser. Do it if you can. Do you think you can threaten Vala and his family again? Oh, you mean you feel everything will be okay by asking for the help of your magician's friend? Oh, how did you know? Does that mean that Riser knew everything? You think she can protect your family? How about I K*LL your stepbrother now to test whether your magician's friend can protect your family since you don't believe that I don't have the ability to do so? Nuu. Vala screamed in his mind, and his breathing became haggard. His eyes were reddened and furious like an angry beast. Then don't try to test my patience. Vala grounded his teeth and asked sadly, Why did you treat me like this? Why did he have to receive this treatment? Why had his family been threatened like this? What did he do? You are a demon. Albion was also angry when Riser threatened Vali and his family. The two of them felt angry at Riser and thought of him as a coward who could only use such an evil method. Why are you acting like a victim now? Did you forget who threatened to K*LL me before? Did you think that you can act as you wish just because you are the White Dragon Emperor and the descendant of Lucifer? How funny. In my eyes, you're a clown who just jumps around. Vala clenched his fists in frustration, yet he couldn't refute Riser's words since he knew Riser was correct. In front of Riser, he was just a clown. Still, as I've said before, I will make your life worse than death. Listen to this. Oh, don't let everyone know that you talk to me and just act naturally, or else. Wait. Vali suddenly felt his heart throbbing, frightened, but he was unable to stop it as he saw a picture of his step-sibling screaming in pain as if being burned onto his mind. No, 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 please, stop. Even if Vala screamed in his mind, he didn't dare to say a single word and just bit his lips until they bled and lowered his head, afraid for someone to see his tears. You don't need to worry. It's just an illusion, but whether it will become a reality or not depends on how obedient you are. Was that an illusion? Was that reality? Vala couldn't even tell, but for one thing, he didn't want to see such a thing anymore. Don't ever think you can escape. In this life, you will become my tool. You can't fight me and can only listen to my every word. But if you want to fight, you can try to hide yourselves or your family. No matter how far deep you hide, I will wind you, and I will destroy all your precious things. So if you don't want all of that to happen to you, do it. K*LL Surzak, since you don't have any choices except to become my tool, Valakuin. Ahad. At that moment, something snapped in Vala's mind. Juggernaut Drive. Suddenly, an enormous aura spread in every direction that startled everyone. After all, this wasn't the time for Vala to move. Even Azazel, who was in charge of fighting Kateria, was also startled, wondering what Vali was doing. Not only was he the descendant of Lucifer, but Vali was also the holder of Divine Dividing. Moreover, he was extremely talented, so after his fight with Riser, he could control the Juggernaut Drive, the strongest state of his Divine Dividing state, which made him able to release the power of the White Dragon Emperor that was sealed on his sacred gear. Everyone was confused since no one except Vali went all out. Yet, the one that shocked the most by Vala's outburst was Surzak. Vali, who was standing behind Surzak, thrust his hand into Surzak's heart. Surzak wanted to react, but it was too late. Yet, as the Mal Lucifer, and the irrational existence in this world, Surzak was only able to react in a miracle way, only a stop your movement and let yourselves be K*led. Those words made Surzak stop in a place and let his heart be pierced by Vali. Cough. Surzak coughed a mouthful of blood as he looked at his heart and was pierced by Vali. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't. His blood kept gurgling out from his mouth. Vali also didn't have mercy due to his mind, which was in disarray, but he could feel the weak heartbeat of Surzak's heart in his hand. At this moment, everyone stopped thinking, and they were unable to believe what they had seen. Nevertheless, even if his heart was pierced and taken out by Vala, Surzak didn't give up since he didn't want to die. Moreover, even if he was about to die, he needed to inform everyone about the real enemy that was hidden in the dark. Yet, when he was about to talk, close your eyes, stop struggling, be silent without talking until you die. Surzak was unable to fight those orders and did what was said, yet inside his mind, he was screaming in rage. Razir, it's you, right? You coward. How dare you? How dare you? As Surzak's body weakened and he was unable to fight back against those orders, his mind could work as he was in a rage, knowing he was about to die. I know I should have K*led you. You coward. Yet, the quieter it was, the more scared he was as he kept screaming his name. Then, a sound of giggle was heard. This voice. Surzak was extremely familiar with this, and he recalled the words that Riser said before Riser returned to the underworld. Yet, at the same time, it also sent him into dread as he knew he could no longer be saved, especially when Vali started to behead his head. Goodbye. Riser. After Surzak released an incompetent roar, he felt dreaded and despaired as he entered in eternal darkness. Congratulations, you have received the ruler. Oni-sama, what's wrong? You seem to be in a good mood. Ravel asked curiously as she noticed Riser was smiling. Riser, who was in his villa, gazed over the beauty of nature as he sipped the wine slowly and thought that the taste of the wine was more delicious than ever. Yes, the wine just tastes delicious. As he sipped his wine again, he knew he could have a good sleep tonight. It's a bit plain, but that's it.